As the work ensues, so does the mess on the workbench. What's going on, everybody? This is Mark with Hindsight. Here's an update video. I had an interesting development. So here's the piece that I welded up. I'm not fully welded this edge, the inside edge. I just did the back side and grinded it down to fit and kind of see how things were looking. And I mean, it was okay, but I ran into one major problem. So I have 18 gauge steel. I thought that's what this was on my 68 Fury. And when I put this piece down on my plate, it was significantly higher on this edge where the spot welds are, and I have to kind of be there. And so then I'm like, went on a nice discovery with my Eastwood. Bought one of these jobs too. I didn't have this when I first started, but to show the gauge thickness of the metal. And as a result, I show the Fury metal around the trunk to be 19 or 20 gauge. I could get the 20 gauge in there and it was pretty snug. So maybe it is 20 gauge, but so that kind of made me kind of take a step back and think about, okay, where do I want to go from here? I don't want to use the 18 gauge and have this. I mean, it's super strong. It's great for the piece on the bottom because it makes it super strong. But I want this to butt up well with the piece to the existing car piece. So I took a step back, woke up this morning. I'm like, all right, I'm going to give this a shot. I want to see what the 19 gauge does with the bead roller. So here is I have some scrap 19 gauge steel that was from an original floor pan that I didn't end up using because it just didn't work well. Apologize for the chicken scratch. Yesterday, or actually the day before yesterday, I got a call from a friend. He was watching the YouTube video, Neil Cooper. Thank you, Neil. And was giving me some ideas on what I could try, and I liked them all. So the first thing we discussed was, the original sheet that I had. It's somewhere in this mess. I had a lot of excess metal. Oh, I think it's literally right here. So I had a lot of excess metal. And I agree that's going to probably cause a problem with this bend here, that bringing all of this metal, trying to get this metal to move is probably going to be very difficult. So maybe that is why I couldn't get this to work. So that's why the chicken scratch on this piece, because it's going to be much smaller. So this will be my good cut. I had to move it because there was a dimple die. I guess it's a dimple die. Yeah, on the floor pan. And I wanted to get that out. And so I have just a little piece of it left, so I had to shift it down. But anyway, here is my line that I'm wanting to follow. That is going to be the inside line on here. And so there's very little excess. So this edge and, well, I actually have a little more here, but I don't have a problem with this side of it. It's really just here. So I can shrink and stretch here a little bit and not even touch. I mean, it's probably going to be, some of this is going to be trimmed off. And there was another option that Neil brought up that I like as well. And that's like, if I have trouble bringing this in, I could make some relief cuts and probably hammer die the edge, because that was one of my big concerns is I could not get this edge to be near what it's supposed to be. I couldn't get it to slide in. But if I do some relief cuts, I can bring that in and then weld the gap or put a piece of metal in there or do something like that. That's probably going to be a lot better than the whole piece being welded. So I mean, this is a lot more grinding going on when I weld this edge, weld the inside edge, and then try to grind it back off to something similar to what's here. So I'm gonna give that a shot. And so I'm gonna bead roll the 19 gauge steel. I do have some 20 gauge that I can do as well. It doesn't really take that long to do this, and this is kind of a test piece anyway. And I'll just make a decision on whichever one's best. So thank you, Neil, and I'll be back here in a bit with an update. So I'm basically making multiple passes and bringing it down about a turn each time, or maybe I started with a turn and a half, and then I'm just going to follow the line on this inside of the upper die and go through. So I do have a question while we're here. I don't know if this has actually been discussed on any other show, and it has to do with music that you listen to while you work on your car. I have a theory that the right music can dictate whether you have an enjoyable experience or not. Like if I like, or if I am playing hard rock, then it's really good for those super difficult, lot of strength type actions, like replacing the ball joints on a vehicle or something like that, where, you know, it kind of goes along with that whole hammer thing, or brakes or something where you gotta do some heavy physical action. But I have noticed something for something like this, country music is really good. It just kind of, you just kind of flow along, don't have a care in the world, and it seems to make things better. But I want to know what you think. What do you guys listen to when you're working on your cars? Comment below. Let me know. I'm just curious. All right. Well, it has been a few hours later. I've been working the metal. I used the bead roller for the first, 45-degree bend to give me a template, and then I've just done a barrage of different things to try to get it to come around, and here's where we're at. I did make one relief cut here, as my buddy Neil suggested, and that helped me out quite a bit, because then I was using, most of my tools are all over the place at this point. I had a pair of welding snips. They're probably over at the car, but they're really long, so I could lift this up, get a good angle at it, get this angle where I wanted it, and then fold it down with those same snips, and then I have this that I bought off of Amazon. It's just a 4x4 1/2-inch steel, and I could put it in the vise, and it's much better at giving a nice edge, and you can work it. I had to do it a couple of times because the distance wouldn't be right as it went along. So I still have a lot more to do with it. As you can see, I got a lot of shrinking and stretching marks to kind of work out. Supposedly, I've watched where you can hammer and dolly most of those marks out, and most of this is going to get cut off anyway. But I do have that relief cut. There was another relief cut right here, but most of that got cut off. So let me show you what it looks like on the car. All right, so here's what it looks like on the car. I'm trying to do this without getting funky lights. I like this edge. I need to roll this edge a little bit more. It's a little high, but I did that once, and then here it is on this side, and I think I can, I'll have to weld this in, so I'm gonna have to grind that anyway. But I think I got this pretty good. I'm kind of happy with this piece. So I'm going to keep working the metal and kind of getting everything in. And then once I'm ready, I will trim this back. Some of this metal here, they had filled with filler, so I need to bring it up. So I'll use like this piece of wood, put it underneath, and kind of tap it up gently and slowly. There's some dents here and stuff that, rather than try to fix, the previous owner just filled with Bondo. So I think I'm moving pretty good here, and I am super happy with this. So Neil, I owe you a beer. So more to come. All right, so here's where we're at. I basically have everything dialed in. I have a little bit of flexibility. I have some gaps that I need to deal with on here. That side looks real good, but it has a nice transition. I feel like the gap is pretty good. I have basically the trunk set in here the way I want it to sit. I have close to equal gaps. This is kind of jacked because I pulled the weather stripping out so the trunk sits lower. But this gap seems to be close to the right size, and I think this is going to work. This is pretty good for me. So I got 2 screws in here to keep it in place because, the second I move the hood off, this whole thing's going to move. So I really want to make sure I'm in a good place. I will spot weld here onto there. I'm going to put some weld through primer on between the 2 pieces, and next is pretty much welding. Now the actual sheet metal comes like right here. It just barely is getting caught by these 2 screws. So I'm gonna be very careful. I want to get this in place so that nothing can move around on me, and then just kind of make a cut or find out where my seam is, and or where my edge on the underside is, and then, or I could just make a cut right here and make a straight line and bring it in. So it's the point of no return. It's kind of how I'm feeling, but I'm feeling good. I kind of like this. This is 100% better than it was before. I can see my trunk is kind of flared up a little bit, and I think that's because of all the problems I've been having where it was digging into the metal, and so this trunk needs to be shaped a little bit, but I'll leave that for another day. So moving on. Okay, so I was a little premature earlier with my tapping them in. I had to clean this up because I was beating the heck out of that, and I didn't put the weld through primer on the back side, and I didn't have this bend or this cut in. So here's where we're at now. I can put this in, and I'll put the screws back in, but yeah, hold on one second. Okay, there we go. The screws are back. Now you see where I have the weld through primer on both sides, and I think this is looking pretty good. I think the lines flow well. This gap's going to be a little challenge to fill, but I got this cut. I fixed the relief cut. I welded it on the back side, and put a little extra weld on this seam just to give it some strength. So I'll basically trim this off. I'll spot weld this into place, and that's going to put it in. I'm going to put the trunk back on one last time just to make sure all my lines are good. This is looking good. This is ready to go down. I'll probably do some plug welds on this side. I don't think I'll be able to maybe I can get the spot welder on that. If I can, then that's perfect. I'll do that. And but yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. So this, of course, is not done yet. That was not all the way down. There. So yeah, so I got some clamps to hold it down. I kind of cleaned it up a little bit. I made a relief cut here and here, similar to what I did here and here. And then I was able to make the bend, and I might have to tweak it a little bit, but I can do that while it's on the car. So moment of no return, I guess. I'll spot weld these in place, then I can remove these. I'll put the trunk on one last time, make sure it's good. Spot weld these, then I can remove these because this will be kind of all in place. Get this spot welded, get that all lined up, and then I can basically take my Dremel or whatever and cut along here and just follow this line, take these screws out, and then basically work the metal together. And then this whole piece should be done, at least from a physical standpoint. I still have maybe some body work to do or something like that, but then I can go back to doing the brace and the hinge and all that fun stuff. So here we go. Okay, so here is an update as to where I'm at. I got the new piece welded in and got an initial rough cut, I guess I would call it. I did have an interesting deal here. There's a seam here, and this is filled with lead. So I had to I used MAP gas. It's a little hotter than propane. And then I used I guess that's a steel brush. It really wasn't that hard. You just kind of heat it up a little bit, and it just kind of turns to a liquid, and then you just kind of scrub it out. I did put this piece of metal in here, and I made a little step bend to it so it would sit underneath, and then spot welded my new piece into the seam just to give it a little more rigidity at that point. Otherwise there was going to be a gap of like an inch that didn't have any structure to it, or that I was worried it would kind of give it a little bit of movement at some point in time. I mean, probably not, but just to be safe. So I have a little bit of filler here to do. Kevin suggested I use some fiberglass type stuff, so I'm going to see what that is. It's better for bigger gaps, although this gap really isn't that bad at this point with that piece of metal in there. But I think my edge is okay. I think it's kind of taken shape, and I will skim coat the spot welds and just kind of make, I mean, the factory, if I were to look around this trunk, there are already some spot weld marks, so I'll kind of clean them up and make them not as noticeable. But I think I'm at a good point here. I feel like the piece is in, it's solid, and I believe the welds are good. I can feel and see on the backside, I can see, that it's filled the gaps. So I mean, I might have some more grinding to do when I get to like a body work phase, but I need to progress with the original issue here, and that was the rusted out supports. So next I'm going to build a replacement support for this. It's not going to have the torsion bar set up, but it'll just be a nice, quick and easy. I'll use this as a basic shape for here. This is what welds on the bottom spot, and then it comes up, and then there is another piece that has the hinge on it that in this piece it's like totally gone, but it would attach to this, and then the hinge part will be on that. So I'm going to fabricate a piece like this and the part that has the hinge, and that's coming up next, and then see if I can get a functional trunk again. That would be nice. If you like this content, please hit the like and subscribe. Lets me know that you like watching this, and that channel is providing useful content. Thank you very much.